Welcome everyone. It's wonderful to be here today moderating the panel with our esteemed guests. The way we're going to run this is we're going to spend 5 minutes with each person on the panel, and they're going to give an overview of the work they're doing around mWomen in their respective organizations. And then we're going to open it up to a little Q&A between myself and the panelists, and then we'll also open it up to the floor at the end to ask questions. So feel free to prepare some questions as well as we go through this. Just a couple of introductory comments. Happy to be here moderating, especially at Vodafone. We've been working on the mWomen program since the onset. We recognize a commercial opportunity where women are concerned. We are 50% of the world's population, and we represent a 28 trillion USD spend over the next several years, according to the Harvard Business Review. And there is a real opportunity here to have a commercial impact and as well as a social impact. So the other thing I want to mention here is everyone you see sitting here has a day job. Is that correct? And I think it's important to note that these types of activities don't get to be where they are as we see today. If I think back 2 years when we started with an initial workshop around these findings from the Cherie Blair Foundation, unless you have people committed to really driving this agenda. And so my hat's off to everyone here on the panel for taking the time to really look deep at this opportunity commercially, as well as I think every one of them will probably mention that there is a really good feeling about the social impact this can have at a global level. And I think coming from the companies that are represented here today, this is what that's all about. It's about having impact at a global level. That's why you work at companies like Nokia and Indosat and Qualcomm and so on, because you are looking to have a global impact. Otherwise, you could just go do a small entrepreneurial startup in the Valley or something like that. So with that, I want to first say thank you for everyone being here today. And then I'm going to actually ask now Mary for you to start and give a little bit of an introduction around your work at Nokia.
Great, thank you. Very pleased to be here. My title is Head of Mobile Phones at Nokia, which is actually the lower end part of the business. You may know we've been going through quite a transformation at the company with the high end of the business now aligned with Microsoft. My portion of the business is falling under the umbrella of what we call our next billion strategy. So how do we connect the next billion consumers to the internet? We've had a pretty good running start. Our feature phone platform actually just celebrated its 1.5 billionth shipment last month. So we've got a good start, maybe about 650 million active users of feature phones today. But we think there's a lot more that can be done. So we're really excited to start working with the mWomen Foundation about how we could do specific actions and activities as an opportunity to grow the business. We're interested in both the 3.2 billion people that don't yet have a phone and what can we do in terms of designing the right device and its characteristic, as well as 1.2 billion people that have a phone but don't yet have a data plan. Either the phone's not data capable or they simply can't afford a data plan. And we think there's opportunities in both dimensions. I think when Trina talked about some of the differences between young women's awareness of mobile capabilities relative to their older sisters, that's very much what we're seeing. And so when we initially started our work on Next Billion, we were thinking a lot about rural markets, and that has traditionally been our focus. But over the past 6 months, based on new research that we're doing, we've shifted our focus to also target young urban consumers. And we see the growth, probably about 70% of the Next Billion opportunity coming from China, India, Indonesia, and Nigeria. So really 4 big countries representing the bulk of the opportunity. And not, as I said, not just in rural areas, but also, how do we get the young people? So when we think about devices, it's how do we get data-capable devices to lower price points? How do we get devices that are not black and square and very masculine looking? I'm not talking about pink phones, but I'm talking about phones that look good and convey some social status. And so we have completely overhauled our industrial design at the low end to more vibrant colors, sleek and slim designs to increase that appeal, as well as making them more internet capable. But we've also been investing a lot in our Life Tools services. And in fact, just yesterday we announced the new enhanced version of Life Tools. And Life Tools is an SMS-based service that has initially started targeting educational, health, agricultural, and entertainment information. So really targeting people without data capabilities so that they can have access to the world around them. This has particular relevance to women. We started out thinking about women primarily in the health sphere, so we have a service that provides pregnancy tips. You enter in when your baby is due, and we will give you timely information every week to help you with your pregnancy. We also have capabilities around parenting. But yesterday we announced some enhancements to the service, its look and feel. So it's now a younger and fresher look for more social engagement, but also trying to make it less one-way communication. So people can now, in addition to getting the information, they can ask an expert. So if a mother wanted to contact one of our medical professionals for nutrition information, she can do that from her phone directly. And we have medical professionals available 24/7 to respond to consumer questions. So there's also capabilities like that. The education service, particularly relevant, helping people learn English and doing this in a context of their local language. We support this in 16 languages. But beyond that, we're also thinking about women as business people and as entrepreneurs, so teaching financial literacy, communication skills, business etiquette, such sorts of things. So all of these are new capabilities of the enhanced version of what we're now calling Nokia Life. We will be expanding this beyond the 4 core countries this year because we do see an opportunity. And as Lee said, it's something that makes you feel good because I think we are definitely providing valuable information to people, but it's also good business. So when we look at the statistics, it has a huge influence on device purchase and also the impact of our brand on device repurchase. So it's not pure altruism that's leading us to do this.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks very much. So Rajaram, talk a little bit about the activity at Bharti, and as well, I think you're going to draw a bit on your experience with Unilever as well, and really give us a view from an FMCG perspective on your learnings and how that may compare to the work that's ongoing now at Bharti.
Sure. Delighted to be here. As you know, I think Bharti Airtel has about 180 million subscribers in India. And we have another 50 million in Africa. So that's hitting about a 230 million subscriber base in what is largely defined as the emerging market. And what's probably the context is really with respect to these countries. But I look after the Indian and South Asian operations, so I largely draw on my learnings from what we have experienced in India. I think you must, before we attach so much accountability and responsibility to the mobile business in developing countries, we must try and understand how long it took. It's just 15 years since the first call was made in India on a mobile phone. And we have almost 700 million connections in a population of about 1 billion. Compare that with the fact that we still have about 1/3 of the country below poverty line. We have literacy, which is just about inching a little over 50%. So in a way, what the mobile industry has done is really crossed all what were the traditional sort of curves and reached a milestone which is far ahead of what many other industries have done. And I think I'll just talk to you about a lady I met in an Indian village. And a village in India is typically about, say, a population of about 1,000, 1,200 people, maybe about 200, 250 houses, each of them having about 5 to 6 people living in a house. And I met this lady. Her husband had lost a job. She was about 35 years old, and she had a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. When they went without a job, but she was progressive in her mindset. She was not too intimidated by what had happened. This village got electricity for about 2.5 hours in a day. You had to go close to about 50, 60 meters to go and get water into the house. And you had, which is the kind of adversity which a lot of these villages go through. A while ago, which is about 2 years ago, the company I used to work with before, Unilever, had a program which was called Shakti Amma, which means strong women inside a village. And they pioneered the whole concept about, a woman who begins to form an income-earning cell inside a village. So she became a distributor for consumer products. So every morning, somebody would come and give her some, a bag of shampoo, soaps, some tea, some detergent. And she would then go about to all the 200 houses over the course of the week and sell them. And she would get some money. Over a period of time, her stature in that village went up dramatically because she was one of the few women who started actually earning. Soon the government appointed her as the health advisor for that particular village because she had, first of all, the ability to talk to these houses, and secondly, she had built that amount of her own self-esteem and relative stature in the village. Now, every day, she would send a text message to the distributor with a phone. It was a Nokia 1100, which was, she would send a text message saying, I need these products. That evening, it would get delivered to her. Very soon, and in a few days from now, she would actually be able to send the money to the distributor because she now is enabled on a SIM card with a mobile money wallet, right? She, at the same time, after she finishes these rounds, in the evening, converts that mobile phone into a public phone booth because there are no lines. So she sits on a table, and everybody from the village comes to her and then makes a call from that phone to anybody else and pays her some amount of money. She even charges for incoming calls, although incoming calls are free in India. Yeah? But she's created her own model. The government sends her messages every time there is a vaccination drive or a polio drive or things of that sort. Now, you can see very quickly, so it's not really about how the first, of course, she was conceived, it was conceived that she would be an entrepreneur. But the entire mobile ecosystem has now enabled her to enter both just about everything that we spoke about. So there is connection, there is commerce, there is health, so much so that if there's no electricity, her son gets the cricket scores on the phone. Right, so there's that degree of entertainment. I think the ability of this device, as well as mobility as a service to transform these villages has been enormous, and that's something. And of course, it gives me great pride to say that her mobile connection was that of Airtel. Now, the reason it has happened in a country like India, I think we very often, it's not about really giving individual services all the time like health. I think access is the single biggest barrier between the progress which we wish for women to have and what they actually end up with. Why is it, and I think Trina mentioned it in the presentation over here, very often the person who sacrifices any luxury or any service or perceived luxury is the woman in the house. As long as the mobile service is expensive, it will reach everybody else in the house and she will be the last to go because that is the ethos of these countries, that the woman will deny herself because it would rather be used for food or for anything else. And I think by making a service like the mobile phone and or telephony available at 1 cent a minute, companies like Airtel have actually completely made the aspect of guilt away from her entire life. So she's not guilty anymore about the fact that this phone costs so much, right, or the service costs so much. So that's, I think, a second big transformation which has happened. The third is that of access, which companies like Airtel and many other companies have done, which is of making it available to recharge. Women very often, and men very often as well in developing markets, do not earn monthly income. They earn income every day. So you may spend $3 over a course of 30 days on your mobile bill, but you can't afford to pay more than 10 cents a day because that's your income cycle. Therefore, the mobile companies have innovated to make sure that you can recharge every day for 10 cents rather than go and give an upfront allocation of $3. These are the kinds of innovations which have, I think, fundamentally transformed the entire economy and the entire lifestyles of women. Of course, there are many, now that this has happened and now that there is reach and there is access, the opportunity now is to load on, whether it is health, whether it's commerce, whether it's entertainment. But at the heart of the transformation which has happened in the developing markets, particularly in India, it is the fact that it has been made accessible And it's not accessed by the diluted technology. The traditional mindset used to be that a technology which has to be there for an emerging market needs to be something which is pared down and diluted and therefore inferior. The mobile industry, in fact, has shown that it is the high technology route to get scale which actually reduces costs. So today, the quality of service that she gets in any of the countries, which we are, is no inferior than anything that you would get in a city. But the cost is very low for that minute, and that is what a lot of these companies have done. And Airtel particularly, as you might have heard this morning, has pioneered this entire initiative. So I think that's really from some of the opening comments that I would have on this, right?
Thank you very much. So next up, Shawn, tell us a little bit about Qualcomm and the Wireless Reach Initiative and the work you've been doing in Indonesia and Malaysia.
Sure, thanks, Lee. And hello again to everyone. So I'm lucky in that one of my day jobs actually is running an initiative at Qualcomm that uses 3G wireless technology to improve people's lives, and that's called the Wireless Reach Initiative. So we work to put together projects with other partners, private sector companies, nonprofits, universities, put together projects that use wireless technology in the areas of education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, the environment, and public safety. And we were started in 2006, microphone. And to date, we have 73 projects in various stages of development in 31 countries around the world, working with over 250 partners. So what I want to tell you about is a couple of projects that we have that specifically focus on women and closing the mWomen gap. One of those is in Indonesia, where we partner with the Grameen Foundation and Bakri Telecom. And similar to what my fellow panelist was describing, this is a mobile micro-franchising program where a person in a village, and this is oftentimes a female, will take out a micro-franchise loan. And with that loan, she'll buy a phone kit that has a mobile phone in it, signage, and antenna. She'll go back to her village and she'll retail minutes on that phone. So, it's a fantastic program that really, provides the community teledensity, it provides the microfinance organization a customer who's going to repay their loan. And importantly, once this woman is able to, make money from selling the minutes and pay off her loan, she has a small business. What's exciting about what we're doing with Grameen in Indonesia is we've taken this program a step further, and we created a social enterprise called Rumah. And through that social enterprise, what we're doing is developing applications, other data applications and services that these women can also retail on their mobile phones. So, for example, there's one I'll tell you about called the day job search. As you know, so much of the economy in developing countries is informal. It's the informal economy. So through this day job search application, somebody can sign up. It's about 30 cents a month for this service. And they'll get a daily SMS that will tell them about jobs specific to their qualifications. So that's just one of the services that we've developed, and we're working on a host of others. So it's really increasing the women who are doing this program, their revenue streams. So to date, we actually have over 10,000 women in this program, and they're reaching over 1 million unique customers. 100% of them are profitable. And one interesting statistic is that if they stay in the program for over 4 months, 47% of them are able to raise themselves above the poverty line, which the World Bank defines as making $2.50 a day or less. So really, really exciting. There was one woman that we worked with who her husband left her, and she had 5 children. So she quickly needed to find a way to support them. So through joining this program, she was able to make an income. And she did so well that she actually added 8 women in her village who became entrepreneurs. And through the extra money that she made, she started another business going door to door selling clothing. So just really great stories about women getting empowered through this program. Another project I'll tell you about is something that we just announced today with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women and the Malaysian Foundation for Women for Education and Vocational Training. And so the way this project works is that the Malaysian Women's Foundation for Education and Vocational Training has been training women from rural areas in Malaysia for ICT skills to help them be able to get jobs better and or start their own business. Separately, what the Cherie Blair Foundation has been doing is working on this mentoring program where they connect women from developing countries who are entrepreneurs with mentors who can help them with various advice, whether it's financial advice, legal advice, marketing advice. So we've connected these two wonderful organizations, and through wireless reach, we're inserting the power of mobile. So now the women who are getting trained at the ICT centers are able to get the mentoring services through a mobile device, and they actually don't even have to leave their village. They don't have to go to the ICT training centers. They can do the mentoring right at home on their mobile device. So we just announced that this morning, and we're really looking forward to seeing the results of that. So those are just a couple of examples of the programs that we've been working on.
Thanks, Shawn. Yeah. Okay, so Laszlo, last but not least on the overviews, but in terms of Indosat and the work you've been doing around commercial tariffs and vast bundles that are being targeted at women, can you give us an overview of the activities you have at Indosat specifically that are targeted towards women?
Thank you, Lee. It's a great pleasure to be here, and also very great pleasure to see a great interest from the audience. Working for a company called Indosat, which is part of the QTEL group, and has a very strong position in Indonesia, which is a very big market, a developing market. We have about 52 million subscribers end of last month, and did a couple of big steps recently on the commercial side. One of them was a refreshment of our segmentation, and not surprisingly, one of the results of this segmentation work was that there is a huge group of very special users, women users whose need is significantly different, and we also saw that this need is not properly served at this moment. None of our competitors at the time, including ourselves, has any specific value proposition for this. So based on this path, we decided to launch a product. The name of the product is Hebat Keluarga, launched last July. And within the first 3 months, we reached 1 million subscriber base. The parameters of these users in terms of average revenue per minute, average revenue per user, and other parameters are quite attractive. Even though I have to say that we are at the very beginning of this journey. So based on this initial success, we just started searching for other elements, what we can put on top of it, and I'm very glad to just say that today we announced together with Nokia or cooperation, which will be based on the Nokia Live tool, and it's called Info Vanita, which is a specially designed value-added service for mothers-to-be or new mothers and all the female part of the society to address their special needs about healthcare, about entrepreneurship, about all other elements what makes their life interesting. I have to say that one of the results of our research was that life-changing kind of value-added services are very much in an interest of the customers, beside just gaming and entertainment, other things. So we launched this today, and I'm very proud that we made this enormous big step. We have a couple of other things coming up very soon. One is the Rumah Pulsa, what Shawn mentioned, and we are very hopeful. before I joined Indosat, I spent 5 years in Bangladesh, so I have a kind of good experience with the Grameen-based initiatives. I feel that we have a very great opportunity to do something very similar in Indonesia. Very much looking forward to. This is an entrepreneurship initiative, and we start, as I see, we start with simple airtime distribution, which will give a kind of significant income and regular income for those individuals who does it under the Ruma Pulsa initiative. And also we are at a very final stage to set an agreement with Mercy Corp. And together with Mercy Corp, we are providing airtime free of charge to support their mother support groups, which is a kind of information distribution initiative to support the mothers-to-be or the new mothers with relevant health-related information, advices, and so on and so forth. So altogether, these initiatives, I hope that will be very, very well welcomed by the women's society. I see that this will increase the stickiness, and I have to say that last but not least, it is very important that we can do something for the society to improve the life of those whose only access to the modern information world is a mobile phone. The very last thing I have to mention that this is a great opportunity for me to express my great gratitude to GSMA, because we run this project together with the GSMA team. There are a couple of guys, Max sitting in an audience and Matt's over there, spent a couple of good working days together. Max a few months in Indonesia, and I have to say that without you guys we couldn't reach so far by today. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. So why don't I now circle back around and ask a few specific questions of the panel, and then when we wrap up with that, then we'll open up the floor for general questions. The last comments you made, actually, Laszlo, brought to mind the importance, and one of the key things that the GSMA really promoted a lot when we set off with formulating the mWomen program, which is the importance of public and private coming together to solve this issue that we face in the divide. In terms of the partnership that you formed, Mary, with Indosat and now, I guess, with the Foundation for Social Change, where you now see public and private coming together, can you just talk a little bit about how that came together and how you see those pieces fitting together, what everyone's bringing to the party?
Yeah, you know, I think when we first started the Life Tools effort, and actually the guys responsible are sitting here, Dieter Mai and Javahar Kandahar. There's Javahar. The guy's actually responsible for, so we're at 50 million audience right now for Life Tools, so it's big, but it was fairly labor intensive because we were curating all of the information ourselves. So actually, Javahar has on his team teachers, doctors, farmers. It's the most interesting set of Nokia employees, I think, anywhere in the company. But it made it really difficult to scale. So some of these partnerships now where there's access to information that we can feel comfortable putting our brand behind, it allows us to reach many more consumers without actually having to generate and curate all of that information on our own. So that's a big part of the scaling, both UNICEF as well as other partners now providing some of that additional information to us. And part of what we want to do in the non-altruistic side is make the phone the conduit to information. So at the lowest levels, that's going to be via SMS, but we think also as people step up to browser-capable phones, we run a big proxy browsing service as well. And one of our points of differentiation is putting local content on the start pages. So in, I think it's 21 markets, we've got locally tailored start pages from when you initiate the browser. And so those local partnerships are really important to having the relevant news service, health information, entertainment service that's going to make the browser experience more meaningful.
Thank you for that. Shawn, I'm going to pop back to you. You were talking to me before we started around some interesting stories that you've gathered through your work in Indonesia and Malaysia. And I guess this brings to mind that you know, there are a lot of social and cultural barriers involved with a program of this sort, and Trina was highlighting some of the statistics and issues facing women when they come into mobile phone ownership and some of the concerns that are raised. Can you talk a little bit about some of your findings through your program at Qualcomm around some of the barriers that women face?
So what we found with our program in Indonesia, certainly at first when we were trying to sign up women, you know, there were men doing this. And, you know, as expected, we faced some issues around the women not being comfortable speaking to men without their husbands being there and things like this. Now that, you know, that may not have been as much of a surprise, but what happened later that did sort of catch us by surprise was that as we signed up more women, some of the most successful women in the program, the ones making the most money and, you know, helping themselves, actually started dropping out. And we couldn't figure out why. We weren't getting a straight answer. And again, this was often because men were asking the question to the women. So we hired female surveyors to speak to these women, and we found out that it was indeed, just as Trina's report showed, that the issue was that the husbands were uncomfortable with the changing dynamics of the household. That, you know, the money that the women were making through the program was actually, you know, in their eyes, not a good thing because it changed those dynamics. So one of the changes we made with the program to address this is really sort of making the agreement to start the business a joint agreement between the wife and the husband, so that they both sign up and they both feel sort of bought into the program.
Wonderful. And Rajaram, I see you nodding your head, you know, a lot in regards to Shawn's story, but being that you're, you know, a marketing person through and through, how do you see companies such as Bharti, Airtel selling in services that you were bringing up, like accessibility and coming up with sachet tariffs and all these different opportunities? I mean, Bharti's a big company. Do you have the family tariff plan in place for everyone? Does it make sense in your market? And how do you get your constituency at Bharti to really buy in to the effort that it takes to get the right product in the hands of women?
So I think one point which did come up in the earlier presentation was in a lot of markets we have not used the very definition or the tagging of gender on our access forms. And I think increasingly companies like us are doing that very actively to at least know very clearly that the consumer, because it's not, while it's not a regulatory issue, it is something that becomes important for us. But I think as marketers, and more importantly, we have access to perhaps the single largest communication channel in any of these markets. We see a large role in actually breaking some of the stereotypes also, which are there, because traditionally a lot of the services have been, the classic cookery tips and fashion tips and things of that stuff. We don't know the women who are there, who we call the underserved today, actually have a huge demand for productivity enhancing, life enhancing tools, because in their eyes, this is the first time where within their lifetime they're going to see a transformation. And therefore their interests are more in the area of whether, my family's health is going to be better, is there a way in which my finances can be managed better, is there an alternative? And therefore a lot of our services are actually driven by that. So the kind of content we are focusing on is in the area of life enhancement and not what are, the stereotypes which are there. Secondly, the area of affordability. That is something which we must keep in mind. And I think it is not just the absolute sum which is there, but the manner in which, the entire spending pattern happens. Family plans are something that we've already started, but I think this is something that will develop more and more as one begins to sort of get the kind of analytics required to bring the entire family database together. But the big responsibility that we see going ahead, not just from I think we strongly believe that, what is good for the customer is finally going to be good for us. So you can actually do well by doing good as well. And I think so there is a big opportunity for us as we begin to give relevant content. We support a lot of women's aspirations. And that, when right priced, with the kind of access and reach that we have to our advantage, we should be able to push a lot. There is also an opportunity at the urban side of it, and I think we sometimes tend to imagine that this entire women's opportunity is purely a rural opportunity, but we have a lot of women who are there who find utility from these services. For example, in urban cities today, we have an emergency alert service, which is that you just press one dial on your phone, and 5 numbers or 4 numbers who need to know where you are at any point of time or you're in trouble get to know immediately. Likewise, for example, in a lot of cities where women would not stand at the edge of the road and hail down a taxi, today being able to actually hail a taxi and get it home and then move in transportation time. So safety is another big aspect which I think can be promoted, and we have services which we're sort of positioning as far as that is concerned. The last, I must say, is that there are opportunities to significantly include women through the mobile ecosystem, which are things, for example, in voting. A large number of women do not vote. And we have a very good opportunity, actually, to, at the time of voting, either by the knowledge of the age of the person or otherwise, encourage people to actually go and vote. And women, in fact, if are targeted on these campaigns, it's a very, very compelling way for mobile companies actually to participate and encourage, because very often these movements begin to get a good amount of social traction, and they happen. And we're seeing that these kinds of things are good services for us, and we are actively participating in that right now.
Wonderful, thank you. So lastly, Laszlo, and then we'll open up to the floor for questions. In terms of the research work you've done at Indosat and the methodology, if you will, around how you approach the opportunities, starting with the most basic things that even Trina mentioned around ticking the box for gender, when big prepaid markets, and we've seen this even in Vodafone's footprint as well, that we're missing a lot of data around the gender of our users, especially in large prepaid markets. How have you gone about it, Indosat, really sort of being very methodology sort of focused around the approach of getting the right data and research findings to drive your offers?
We did a very extensive qualitative research and interviewed a couple of ladies representing. I mean, Indonesia is an enormous big country, 17,000 islands in 3 time zones, and huge differences between Java, non-Java, and also others. So we tried to have a kind of very thorough picture through this, and obviously it was rather a kind of reinforcement what we already expected, that it is very important for women to know where their family is. It is very important that they can read. So the validity doesn't hold them back in cases, and their calling circle, very interestingly, especially married women, calling circle is significantly lower than before they get married, and it's like a very targeted friends and family kind of solution. Help them being in touch with those who are actually important for them. And as I said, I feel that we are really at the beginning of this great journey. So we have just started the product. Hebat Keluarga was launched last July, and today we announced with Nokia the Info Vanita, and as I mentioned, Ruma, Pulse, and Mercy Corp is coming up. We continue the research, and I feel that this will be a kind of go and learn kind of move from our side.
Do you have metrics for the services that are being delivered in terms of how you're tracking their success, and are there specific things you're doing at your business to ensure that you're capturing the data in the right phase of these projects?
Yes, we do, and one of the results I would highlight that practically anyone can buy this Hebat Keluarga, men and women, it doesn't matter. But on those days or those weeks when we have very extensive communication about the special benefits for women. On those days or weeks, the ratio between the two genders is just really, really significantly different. So it is a proof that it is a right thing to do. So we have to just continue and make sure that it really goes and match with the need and shows the benefits for women.
Thank you. Okay, so I think with that we can open it up to questions on the floor.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Janovich with the GSMA Foundation. I'm wondering if you could comment on whether you have any data on the gender disaggregation of your agent networks. And can you help to, would you see that developing female agents would be a way to reach out more to female customers? And also, would you see that as an entry point for private-public partnership?
Excuse me, pardon me if I'm wrong, but I think you're going down the route of women who are reselling products and services into their community, friends, and family. And the question was around whether you are having data and tracking data around that activity.
Then I try. No, it's working. I think we are at the beginning, but as I know in India and my experience also from Bangladesh, that is absolutely a relevant thing to do. And as Shawn mentioned, but I don't want to take the words on behalf of her. There's a relevance. We are working on it, and this initiative that I mentioned together with Roma Pulsa would completely based on this kind of strong belief of us that women entrepreneurs can really go deep into the local societies and can become actually the leaders of the local circles and then can explain the benefits of specific value-added services. This is a technology industry, and not all, especially in the bottom of the pyramid. One of the barriers that we need to face with and cope with is how to explain the benefits for someone who just made the first phone call in the last year, and then we are talking about extremely complicated, very beneficial value-added services. So I strongly believe that this is a direction what we need to explore, and we are working on it.
With the mobile micro-franchising program that we do with Grameen Foundation, I mean, certainly we have a network of over 10,000 women. And I know that Grameen is actually looking at other ways to utilize that network for ideas such as you describe. And actually, Shawn DeWitt from Grameen is right here in our audience. So, Shawn, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Shawn. Yeah, we do have a lot of this data. Part of the issue is that we've been very focused on increasing the number of people in the network and increasing the products they have available. So we haven't really looked at it. I mean, we do have, there's about 10,000 women and there's about 1,000 men in the portfolio. It'd be fascinating to look at the performance between the two, because we know that the majority of people that they have as customers are part of their social network. So it'd be really, really interesting to look at that. We have the data, but we haven't taken a look at it. So if anyone's interested, we'd happy to share.
You mentioned the really interesting fact that the women were reluctant or pulling out of the program because of the husband's influence. I'm curious to know what were the actual messaging and the actual hook that you used to get the men to change their minds. How did those conversations change? What was that approach that you took that made it more successful to engage them?
So again, I think that the change was sort of at the very, very outset, sort of having an agreement that both the husband and the wife would need to sign in order to begin the program, so that from the very outset, both parties were bought in and supportive and excited about the opportunity.
Hello, can you hear me? It seems like most of these problems are a design problem. Either you're designing a service, a product, or a business. And it's usually design is an iterative process. And what I'm trying to ask is in the sense of how frequent do you catch or capture data that informs you of your customer and how successful your design is that you're inserting into the community?
So Mary, do you want to take a shot at that from the Nokia perspective?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of data, we're getting basically data every day in terms of who's consuming what in what country, and then at the SMS level, and then as we go up into the browser level, what sites they're going to, what the consumption patterns are. So it's pretty real-time sorts of breakdowns. Now, do we have it fine-grained enough to say, this gender, this usage, it probably could be better, which would improve the agility of our design?
I guess the reason I'm more focused on the actual end user giving you feedback instead of just, high-level data. So you insert a design and saying, okay, this doesn't work and why? What are the variables? So you can improve that. Instead, it could be just a little improvement that makes it successful. Do you have that way of communicating with that end user to do that?
We do, and now increasingly with the 2.0 version, this new Nokia Life, with the new social features, we're able to get more two-way communication with the user about the utility of the service, what works, what doesn't. So before it was more, I would say, brute force consumer research sorts of follow-up, and now it's built into the product to have that two-way communication.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's actually quite part of the entire product launch process, particularly for such. So whenever we've done our health products, that's, you really don't know because it's a very long process, and there are many gray areas in what might actually come as a barrier, to the subscriber. And so within, I think, typically within 15 to 20 days of the product getting in and we getting some data, we do either one-on-one calls, or otherwise, if we find a larger issue, we meet and we begin to, correct the product immediately. So that's something which becomes critical. But pricing is something which is different, but product performance is something that's, unless and until it is completely, on the clear, we don't really do it. So.
You mentioned the cash flow issues of some of these consumers. I mean, sort of that pricing sort of data you get immediately. And when we switched to weekly billing instead of monthly billing, we saw the rates really shoot up. So it seems to be very sensitive.
Wonderful. I think it's a very good question because there's a lot of complexity in bringing together services with devices with the right tariff structure and really understanding real time the impacts of all those elements on a customer's uptake. So it does require a very integrated approach. Other questions?
Hi, I'm Susan Chaffin from the Business Call to Action. We're at UNDP. It seems like the mobile industry is well advanced in utilizing and leveraging partnerships to forward their goals and reach scale at the base of the pyramid. Maybe there are some lessons learned or something that you could speak about, opportunities and challenges. Obviously, the rewards we've heard about, partnering with foundations and nonprofit, because I think you all set a good example.
Actually, I'm going to invite Dieter to say a few words because he and Javahar have been doing a lot of the partnering activities.
So I think for us, it was also a really big learning over the last 2 years, basically, because we started off with content partners, which are on the local level, and there, obviously, you needed to partner with people who are probably not used to partner with industry giants. So we need to adapt to that one. That was one learning. The second thing was then we started to engage much more beyond the local level, and there we faced basically different speeds in execution. So I mean, we want to do good, but we want to do good business. And especially if you work with government institutions and also probably some NGOs, they are not used to the clock speed we have in the mobile industry. And even worse in the services space, where you even need to be faster, you continuously innovate, so totally different cycles of innovation. So that was also another great learning for us. But on the other side, I think we were very, very welcome by a lot of the players which are now in our whole ecosystem, because they suddenly see, oh man, I can, instead of reaching 500 women in a village, I can just talk to 1 million and engage a one-on-one direct communications channel. So they suddenly see the reach and the engagement level they can obtain by partnering with us. And I think that is very beneficial for both partners.
This one's actually for you, Mary. We've obviously got a challenge in emerging markets with a lot of rotational churn. And obviously one of the biggest barriers is that initial cost of the handset for these women in terms of being able to space that out. Are there any innovations on your roadmap regarding, locking SIMs into handsets a little bit more securely and gaining revenue, post that initial sale to replicate, the enjoyment that we get from cheaper handsets up front in a postpaid market?
Yeah, you're right. Most of these markets are open distribution, and in many of them it's actually illegal to bundle the service and the device. So there's no technical barrier to doing this, what we do in Western markets, but oftentimes there's regulatory barriers with doing that.
Louise.
It's been great listening to all of you, and thank you. But I'm going to just step in. We have a nice relationship with Nokia and Jawahar and this gentleman and Mary. You just said it, Dieter, that when you have a program that you want to reach a lot of people, and you are limited to 200 girls or women at a time, you could be like 85 years old before you reach like 10,000 women. Okay. So we as an organization, I'm the CEO of the Foundation for Social Change. When Nokia came to us, I thought, wow, how many women could see our content and help them? So I encourage every single mobile operator and handset provider in this group to think about that, because these guys have really set the stage, and I know the folks here have done it. But as an organization, a nonprofit, but we think like a business, it's been fantastic for us. So I want to thank them for that, and it really makes a difference in these people's lives.
Hi, I really agreed with your comments about access and affordability being key in emerging markets, and I know Bharti Airtel has done a fantastic job there in driving that trend. I'm just curious, what are the biggest barriers that you see today to continuing that trend in the markets that you're in? What are the things that keep prices inflated?
I think the next challenge for us is going to be how to just go beyond voice right now, because there is a big opportunity and for us to be able to translate a lot of these services into data. And our ability to do it will really come with the partnership that we have with the device manufacturers as well as the content manufacturers, because a large number of devices actually are not smartphones, so you're going to still have feature phones on which you'll have to do a lot of these things. But I think we're doing it, and we're finding a lot of partnerships which are supporting us in that. So getting people to use data-enabled services and trying to keep the entire cost structure. I think the cost part of it, as Mr. Metzer spoke in the morning, that's something we will manage, because there is, if you get the volumes in place, it is always possible for us to do it. But I think the challenge will come, do we have the rest of the ecosystem in place in terms of in a country like India, you have, whatever, 22 languages and dialects and, literacy levels are not there. So we need to have devices which will be able to overcome a lot of these things. And I think there's a huge leap which we can make in this entire mWomen initiative if we can actually find a way of getting a lot of low-end handsets to be able to be conducive for the kind of applications that we are trying to talk right now. So that, I think, to us will be the biggest challenge going ahead.
Wonderful. So I think we can wrap with that last question. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their time today and all of their insights.
Thank you so much to Lee and to our panel. I think if there was, there were two key takeaways that I heard. One is that if you're going to reach women, particularly underserved women, you fundamentally need to look at the fact that women make up a disproportionate number of the people living under the poverty line. So that means that access and connectivity and pricing are going to continue to be critical for how we're going to close the gender gap. And then the other thing I heard is that we need more data, or we need to analyze our data. We either have data and aren't cutting it by gender, or we're just not tracking gender. And so that if we're going to design services that meet their needs, or do the things that we want to achieve in terms of improving their lives, or whether it's entrepreneurship or health, that we fundamentally need to understand women better. And so with that, what I would like to do is invite all of you who are not part of the GSMA mWomen working group to join us. We have lots of tools and interesting information that we can share with you on how to do that and how to do that better and easier. And if you're not an operator or a mobile industry partner, I heard there's a great mix of people in this room, I invite you to join the mWomen community. I often say that mWomen is not a program, it's a movement. And it goes far beyond anything that the 10 people on our team can do. And so on mwomen.org, there's a full community of people who can reach out to each other to build that ecosystem, because our goal is in fact to get the content providers, the NGOs, the governments, the handset manufacturers, and the mobile network operators all working together in a way that ultimately benefits business and benefits women. So I would just like to close by thanking Qualcomm and Ausaid again for their sponsorship. I'd also like to take a minute to really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank the GSMA mWomen team who have been working tirelessly to make this happen for you, and particularly Julia Burchell and Susan Anaba, who are in the back. If we can give everyone a big round of applause.